friends, welcome back to my channel, and happy new year, happy 2025. Now before we get to chatting about books and I update you on all the things, my Clear the Cart TBR challenge and my favorite books of 2024, I have to give a shout out to the sponsor of today's video, which is none other than my company, Hustle Sanely. Now it's a new year, right? Everybody goes planner crazy at the beginning of a new year, rightfully so. I love a good planner. That's why I own a planner and productivity company. I am on a mission to help ambitious women live peacefully productive lives. I know that for the past couple of years, burnout has been the norm. I feel like burnout has been a lot of people's baseline. So I set out to create planners that are pretty and that help people work toward their goals without sacrificing their mental health and the important relationships in their lives. So if you do not have a planner for 2025 yet, I would like to introduce you to Hustle Sanely's Peacefully Productive Planner. It's an all-in-one tool that helps you set your goals and create plans to pursue them while still taking care of yourself and showing up well for the important people in your life. So if you find yourself just feeling spread too thin, if you feel like at the end of the day you're so exhausted by your to-do list that you didn't even get done, I would 10 out of 10 recommend checking out a Peacefully Productive Planner. We have thousands of happy customers who have used our planners for years and years, and I'm just saying, this is a planner that is not just gonna sit on your desk and collect dust. It's a planner that you're actually gonna be excited to open up and use every single day. Because I love my YouTube family so incredibly much, if you use the code YouTube10, you will get 10% off of a 2025 Peacefully Productive Planner at hustlesanely.com. I would love to come alongside you and coach you through trading burnout for your version of a peacefully productive life. All right, y'all, thank you so much for always being so supportive when my company, Hustle Sanely, sponsors my YouTube videos. I get emails, I'm not joking, y'all, every single day from companies wanting to sponsor my YouTube videos, and I would rather just let Hustle Sanely, my own company, sponsor my YouTube videos because they're products that I obviously stand behind and love, and I'm excited to share them with y'all. So thank you so much for just being so kind about it and so supportive, for purchasing planners and journals and supporting my small business. It truly means the entire world to me. Now let's talk about my Clear the Cart TBR challenge. 6 months ago, so back in June of 2024, I sat in this very spot with a very full, an overflowing TBR cart next to me. I had 60 books on my TBR cart, but the thing is, some of those books had been on my cart for over 2 years, and I was tired of it. I was tired of having a TBR cart that was constantly full, but that I wasn't pulling books off of. So my Clear the Cart TBR challenge was born. I posted episode 1 of my Clear the Cart TBR challenge back in June, or maybe it was July, I don't know, June or July of 2024, and I decided that I was going to spend the rest of 2024, so the second half of 2024, clearing my TBR cart. Here to report back on whether or not I actually cleared the TBR cart by the end of 2024. If you follow me on Instagram, you've already had a spoiler of whether or not I completed the challenge, so just pretend that you don't know if you already know, okay? So drum roll, please. Let me go grab the TBR cart, okay? Here we go. It is empty. As you can see, I did in fact clear the cart for 2024. I was down to the wire. On December 30th, I finished the last 2 books on my TBR cart, which the last 2 were Finale by Stephanie Garber and The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. I'm so proud of myself that I stuck with it and I read all the books on my TBR cart in 2024, and I'm so excited to start fresh in 2025. If you saw 2 videos ago of mine, I did a massive book haul and I filled up the cart for 2025. And I gotta say, in 2024, thanks to my Clear the Cart challenge, I learned so much about my book tastes. And I also feel like I picked up way better book buying habits, like more mindful, more intentional. So I am very excited about my 2025 reading year because I feel like 2024, it was an okay reading year because I was forced to read what was on the cart. There are books that had been on the cart for multiple years that I had bought just because I'd heard like 1 or 2 people talk about them. Didn't really know if it was my book taste. I would just get on a hype train and just like ride it out. I'm not gonna be doing that as much in 2025. I'm going to be so much more intentional about the books that I buy and the books that I read, and I'm ready for it. I'm ready for a fresh reading year. So here is my Clear the Cart TBR challenge final look. So you can see all the books that I have read from June until December of 2024. Now I did read a couple more that aren't on here that weren't a part of my Clear the Cart challenge, and I did wrap-ups for most of the months from June until December. I didn't do wrap-ups for October, November, and December because my family was just going through a really hard time. I lost my grandma on Thanksgiving last year, and so I honestly just didn't have it in me to sit down and talk about books. That's why I took off a few months from YouTube at the end of last year. But you can see these two big stacks of books right here next to me. These are all the books that I read in October, November, and December, and I'm gonna be so for real with you. I am not gonna do a wrap-up with all these books because that overwhelms me. Like, looking at these piles and thinking about having to talk about every single one of these books, I'm just like, whoa, can't do it. Cannot mentally do it. Like, I don't have the mental capacity to do that. So I'm gonna throw up a graphic with all of my ratings for the books that I read from October through December. But if there is a book that you are just like on the edge of your seat, you just have to know my review on it, leave a comment, let me know, and I'll talk about it with you in the comments, like whichever book you want to know about. But I just, like I said, I don't have it in me, okay? I do not have it in me to sit here and talk about all these books right now. So even though I'm not doing an official October, November, or December wrap up, I still want to talk about my top favorite books from 2024 because, to be honest, those are some of my favorite videos to watch in December and January on BookTube. So I didn't want to miss out on the fun. But I'm gonna put a little bit of a twist on it. Instead of just choosing 10 or 12 books from all the books that I read in 2024, I'm gonna pick my favorite book from each month, which makes it a little bit harder to me. So let's take a quick look at my 2024 reading stats, and then we'll talk about my favorite book that I read from each month of 2024. So as you can see, I read a total of 115 books in 2024, and the total number of pages is 43,138. My average rating was a 3.9, which I feel is pretty on par because, like I said earlier, I feel like 2024 was kind of a subpar reading year for me. The first half of the year, before I started my Clear the Cart challenge, I loved it because I was buying books like in the moment that I wanted to read, and so I really loved those books. But the last 6 months of the year, I was kind of forced to read books that I'd had on my TBR cart for years, and so I wasn't as excited about some of those. So I think that kind of impacted my overall rating for the year, and I'm hopeful that my 2025 average rating will be a little bit higher than a 3.9, but I am a pretty picky rater, I will say. So all that being said, let's talk about my favorite book that I read from each month of 2024. So my favorite book that I read in the month of January was Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross. Now, this is book 2 in a duology, so I can't tell you too much about it because I obviously don't want to spoil anything, but the first one was Divine Rivals, and that was one of my top reads of 2023. I will say I like Divine Rivals a little bit more than this one, but because I'm so attached to the characters, Iris and Roman, I was just excited to read anything that had anything to do with them. And I will say book 2 had a lot more to do with like the war between the gods. It was more, I guess, political feeling than the first one. I feel like the first one was more focused on Iris and Roman and the kind of build up of their relationship. Like I said, they just had such a special place in my heart that I knew that I was going to enjoy this one. So I'll tell you a little bit about the first one since I can't really go into this one a lot without spoiling anything. So our two main characters are rivals, and they're both journalists, and they both end up writing for a war that is going on in this world. And they had a connection that one realized and one didn't. They had these magical keyboards, and so they would be writing letters to each other, and one of the characters knew that they were writing each other and the other one didn't. It's such a unique story, and Rebecca Ross's writing is just so magical and enchanting feeling, and I was just completely sucked into the first one. Like I said, the first one I enjoyed more than this one. I still gave this one 5 stars and I absolutely loved it. I just wasn't as invested in this one as I was the first one, but it is still my favorite read from January. My favorite book that I read in February is Picking Daisies on Sundays by Liana Cincotti. I don't know if that's how you pronounce her name. This is the only book that I've ever read by her. And also, how cute is this cover for February? Like, I couldn't have read this in a better month. You know what I mean? So this book, I don't remember a ton about the specifics, but I remember how I felt when I was reading it. That's the case for me with a lot of books that I read. A lot of them go right out of my head. I remember the way that they made me feel. And this one, I just remember it was so wholesome. And I was just so giddy as I was reading this one. So our main character, Danny, is obsessed with rom-coms and she just really wants to find her life's love. And so she is a fashion student, I believe. And she winds up reconnecting with her childhood friend, Levi. I am such a sucker for childhood friends to lovers. So I was bound to have a good time with this, but I just thought Levi was so cute. He's kind of like nerdy vibes, and their connection, it was just so sweet. And it takes place in New York City, so I really enjoyed the setting of this one. And they also, there's a little bit of fake dating that happens because Levi asked Danny to be his fake girlfriend at, I think it was his sister's wedding. So if you're looking for just like a cozy, cute, wholesome romance, this is so cute and it's so good for February. I'm so glad that I read this in February. My favorite book that I read in March is kind of random and I did not expect to enjoy it as much as I did, and it is Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. Now, this is very kind of like out of my norm. It is literary fiction, which I don't read a lot of, and from what I remember, it's about a widow. Her name, is it Tova? Is that her name? Yeah, her name's Tova. And when her husband, after her husband passes away, she winds up working at an aquarium. She works nights because she's cleaning the aquarium. And stick with me here, this sounds so wild. She ends up having a bond with an octopus. His name is Marcellus, I think, that is at the aquarium, that lives at the aquarium. We actually get Marcellus's point of view, and I think that's what made this book so intriguing and entertaining. So this book, it just dives into a lot of deeper topics like friendship, a lot of unlikely friendships form in here, a lot of walking through grief and just kind of holding space for sorrow. So I know that it sounds a little bit odd, like a widow becoming, like befriending an octopus, but I'm telling you, this book was just such a treat to read, especially because, like I said, it was just very out of my norm. So if you're looking for something that is like beautifully written and a beautiful story that is moving, I would give this one a go. Even if you're like, I don't really want to read about an octopus. I didn't either. I don't even know why I picked this up, but I'm really glad that I did. And this is one that has stuck with me throughout the year. And like I said, I typically forget books. They go right out of my head. So if I'm still thinking about a book at the end of the year when I read it in March, that should tell you something. My favorite book that I read in April, I feel like this is on everybody's favorites list, but I have to put on mine too because I'll be lying if I didn't. And it is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. So I love Abby Jimenez. Like, I think anything that she writes will always make it into my top books because she's one of my top 3 favorite authors. I will say Yours Truly is my favorite book by her, but this one is up there. It is about our 2 main characters, Emma and Justin, and they actually meet online. So they are, I think it's like on a Reddit thread or something, and they're both on there talking about how unlucky their dating lives are and how for both of them, whenever they date someone, and then they break up with them or they get broken up with or whatever, the person goes on to marry the person that they date after them. And so they're like, why don't we date and see if we can break this curse that we both have going on? So it sounds like light and fluffy because that's what Abby Jimenez does. She presents like a light and fluffy kind of like rom-com type of vibe, but then she weaves in these scenes and these themes that just get your heart. So we get to watch Emma navigate a really toxic relationship with her mom. And Justin, he's also in a really sticky situation with his family. I don't want to spoil anything, but that's what I love so much about Abby Jimenez's romance books is that I feel like we get to know the characters as individuals and as a couple. And so because we get to know and care about them as individuals and we get to see like the trials that they're going through, we end up rooting for them that much harder when it comes to them getting together as a couple. I feel like everybody says this about this book, but it's so true. Justin truly truly is like, if he wanted to, he would. He goes above and beyond to make Emma know that she is cared for and that she is important. For their date, he literally sends her like a form for her to fill out to like pick out what she wants on the date. And then afterwards, he sends her a survey so that she can like rate how the date went. And I'm just like, bro, like, is he for real? Like, that's amazing. That's incredible. My type A heart ate that up, let me tell you. And then obviously the scene where Emma is sick and the way that he gets to her, I love this book. I loved it. I laughed, I cried. Such a good read. Definitely my top read of April. Next up, my favorite book that I read in May, again, probably not a surprise, was Funny Story by Emily Henry. But I will say Emily Henry's books are not an automatic favorite for me. They either hit for me or they don't. I feel like there's not really an in-between, but Funny Story hit so hard for me. I think about Daphne and Miles on the regular. So the way that they meet, why it's called Funny Story, is they're both with other people and both of their other people end up leaving them and they get together. So like their exes end up getting together. And so they end up, Miles and Daphne, moving in with each other because now they both have nowhere to live because they were living with their significant others who just left them for each other. And it's kind of like this big mess. But the reason that I loved this one so much is because I related a ton to Daphne. She's a children's librarian. She's just kind of like an introvert, like to herself. She really struggles with showing up as a good friend. And that's something, to be transparent, that I struggle with as well. Like, it takes a lot of intentionality for me to show up well in friendships. Like, it just doesn't come naturally to me. And so I really related to that and I loved reading about it. And that's the thing with Emily Henry's books. I feel like if you relate to the characters, you're in it. Like, it just grabs a hold of your heartstrings and you cannot put it down, and you're just so eager to know how things are gonna end for the characters. And then the male main character, Miles, he reminded me so much of my husband. He's just so thoughtful. He's so down to earth. Just had the absolute best time with this one. And it's another one that I think about often. I'm not a tabber, but you can see that I tabbed a little bit because this was actually one of my book club's picks. This was actually the first book that we read when I launched my book club in 2024. And it was a 5-star for me and I absolutely loved it. And I still think about it all the time. My favorite book that I read in the month of June is Ready or Not by Cara Bastone. This book I did not expect to love as much as I did. I literally bought it just because I thought the cover was really pretty, and I am so glad that I gave it a shot and that I judged a book by its cover because it was an accurate judgment. So this one is about a trope that a lot of people don't like, and I'll just say what it is because it's on the back of the book. It's about our main character, Eve, and she gets pregnant after a one-night stand. However, the way that this one was done, I thought it was just so good. I don't mind the pregnancy trope, maybe, I don't know, because I'm a mom, like it just hits and it resonates with me, but I just had the best time reading this, and I loved the best friend in this book. So Eve's best friend, Willa, she was so funny. Like, I found myself laughing out loud. And Willa's brother, Shep, is the male main character in this book. Is this a spoiler? Hold on. Okay, it's not a spoiler, I checked. Shep is not the father of the baby. He ends up stepping up and helping Eve through this season of pregnancy and welcoming in a new baby. We do get to meet the father of the baby, but we spend a lot more time with Willa's brother, Shep. So we have Eve and Shep and Willa. They are just such a fun trio. Like, I absolutely fell in love with them. I laughed out loud during this book. And on the back, there's a blurb by Abby Jimenez and Annabelle Monaghan, which they are two authors that I absolutely adore. So I don't know, this one, it follows Eve's journey through her pregnancy and just watching her be empowered and just step into who she is as a mom to be and just kind of deciding to create a life that is gonna work for her as a mom. I was just rooting for her the entire time and I absolutely loved it. And Shep is an actual angel human. So absolutely love this one. I think you should give it a chance. And if you typically stay away from pregnancy tropes. halfway done. We are heading into July, and I'm kind of cheating a little bit because I couldn't choose just one book for July. I had a tie, and I truly just could not narrow down which one was my favorite. So I'm gonna show you both of them. I have Nora Goes Off Script by Annabelle Monaghan, and then The Rom-Commers by Catherine Center. I read both of these in July, and they were both so good, but for different reasons. So I've read a few other books by Catherine Center, actually maybe only one, The Bodyguard. I feel like her writing and the way that she tells stories, it's just witty, and it's just, like I said, very, very easy to follow along. So this one is about Emma and Charlie. Charlie is a famous, I think it was screenwriter, and Emma is like an aspiring screenwriter. So she loves writing romance, and he is horrible at writing romance. But in order for this next project that he's excited about to get picked up, he has to come up with a romance script first. I don't know why, I don't remember, but I do know that she gets hired to help him write this romance script. He doesn't know that she gets hired, and so she shows up for the job, and he's like, who are you? Why are you here? Like, no, I am not stoked about this, but he has to do it because he really wants that other project to be picked up, so he has to get the romance done. And so Emma ends up living with Charlie, and I don't know, I laughed out loud so much when I was reading this. I just loved Emma as a character, and I loved her relationship with her dad. So she was her dad's full-time caretaker before she accepted this job with Charlie. So her taking this job is a really big deal, like for her to leave home, go live with Charlie for a couple weeks and knock out this project. So that was a really sweet part, was her relationship with her dad, because he was obviously supportive of her like going and pursuing this dream of hers. Just her personality, she was very like quippy, and she just was who she was, like unashamedly. Like she didn't try to be anyone who she wasn't just because he's like this famous, well-known screenwriter. She was just like, I don't really care. Like, I'm still gonna just act like who I am. And I just loved, normally I don't love quirky characters, but she was like a quirky that was like cute and not annoying, if that makes sense. So this one was such a good one. I was very invested the entire time, and I highly recommend it. And then Nora Goes Off Script. This one was less cute and like fun to read, but this was my first book by Annabelle Monaghan, and I was obsessed with her writing style, like so obsessed that I went and bought every other book that she's written so that I could read them this year. The plot felt so out there, but the way that Annabelle Monaghan wrote it, I was like, oh yeah, like this could totally happen. The characters just felt so down to earth. They felt like real people, and I'm a big, like, I have to connect to characters or I'm out. Like, I do not care about a book if I don't connect to the characters. And so, and not connect in the way of like, I have to relate to them. I just have to care about them as people, and I cared about them as people. So what this one is about, Nora is a writer, and I think she writes screenplays too. And that's funny, I didn't realize that both of them were about screenplays. So she writes screenplays, and she ends up writing one that is about her divorce, and it gets picked up, and the character that is playing her ex-husband is this huge movie star. His name is Leo, and they're filming the movie at her house because I guess they want it to be like authentic. And so he ends up like spending a lot of time at her house. He ends up staying there. As I'm sure you can imagine, a romance ensues. She has 2 kids, and I don't mind kids in books. I know some people don't really love that, but they were so funny. Like, they actually made the book funnier to me. And so I loved watching the kids' interactions with Leo. But I will say, the miscommunication at the end of this book, I wanted to throw the book across the room. Like, I was so aggravated at the miscommunication, like the third act breakup, whatever you want to call it, at the end of this book. Truly, I want to throw it. But nonetheless, overall, I had such a great time reading this one, and I'm so excited to read the rest of her books. So these were my 2 favorite books in July. Sorry that I cheated and I had 2, but you know what? It's fine. Moving on, we have August. My favorite book that I read in August was Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonham Young. She's this is the first book that I've read by her, and I went and ordered every other book that she's written. I have 2 of her books pre-ordered for 2025. I absolutely fell in love with this story and her style of writing. This was so pure, so wholesome. So our 2 main characters, we have Win and Bo, and they both have limb differences. So you can see that Bo has a prosthetic leg on the cover. You can see that, right? Yeah. Is it focusing? I don't know. And then Win, one of her hands is smaller than the other. And so they kind of connect on that, and they meet at a party. I think it's Win's best friends, and then he's friends with the husband. So it's a Halloween party. They end up meeting at this Halloween party, have a one night stand, something happens. I'm sure you can guess what. I'm not gonna say what it is. And they end up like forming this friendship to figure out how to navigate this new season of life that they're entering into together. And it was the sweetest, most wholesome thing. Like, I love them as a couple so much. I love them as individuals so much. Their relationships with their best friends, like the four of them together, I was obsessed. I want to read you a line out of this one that just like, it says, "You are my soul's purpose when to know you, to love you, to build a family with you, to spend every day taking care of you, to watch you shine and get all the good things you deserve out of this life." You're joking. You're joking. So like I said, just so pure, so wholesome. I feel like you can't read this without falling in love with Win and Bo as individuals and as a couple. I just had such a great time and I highly recommend it, and I cannot wait to read other books by Hannah Bonham Young. And I honestly haven't seen very many poor reviews of this one. Like, most people who read this one have a really good time with it. So give it a chance if you haven't read it yet. And then let's talk about my favorite book that I read in September. It is Daydream by Hannah Grace. You guys, I said earlier, I'm not a tabber. I tabbed this one up. I resonated with this book so much, and I'm gonna be so honest, I was not that excited to read this one because the Maple Hills series, this is book 3 in the series. Icebreaker is the first book, Wildfire is the second book, this is the third book. It is nothing like the first 2 books in the series. I liked book 1 back a few years ago when I read it. I think if I read it again now, I'd be like, it was okay. Book 2, I read it in 2023. I did not like it at all. So I had very low expectations for this one, and I almost didn't read it, but I loved the cover so much. I was like, okay, fine, I'll give it a chance. And I'm so glad that I did. So Henry is the captain of the hockey team, which is what the series is like kind of about. This one doesn't really have too much hockey in it. So if you're like, don't care about hockey, you'll still have a good time. And then Hallie, she is this bookworm, book lover, and she is also an eldest daughter, and that comes up so much. That's what most of these tabs are. It's about like her being an eldest daughter and just her experience as that. I am also an eldest daughter, and the dedication of this book, I was like choking down a sob. It says, "For the eldest daughters in my life, I see you, I appreciate you, and most important, I love you for who you are and not what you do for everyone." And wow, when I say that I related to a character, I relate to a character. If you're an eldest daughter, read this just because you're an eldest daughter, and you will feel very seen if you read this book. But anyways, our main characters, Henry and Hallie, they end up meeting at Hallie's book club, which, how cute. Like, they meet at a book club. Come on. He accidentally is crashing the book club. So they meet at her book club, and Henry is actually in need of a tutor because, like I said, he's captain of the hockey team, and so he needs to keep his grades up in order to maintain his position as captain. And so Hallie agrees to tutor him and help him with his schoolwork. So they end up spending a lot of time together. They build this relationship, this friendship, and then it just kind of goes from there. Like I said, this one is just so pure, so wholesome. I feel like if you don't care about the characters, you're not really gonna be that into this book. I love this one so much. Even if you did not like the other 2 in the series, give this one a chance because I feel like it felt like a different book. It didn't even feel like a part of that series other than the found family. Like, I enjoyed the found family part of this one, but like the story, the plot, like this one is nowhere near as spicy as the other 2. I feel like the other 2, like, spice level is high. This one, not so much. And where there is spice, it's a part of the plot. It's not just spice for spice. You know what I mean? So anyway, loved reading about Henry and Hallie. Next up, we have my favorite book from October, and that is The Match by Sarah Adams. This is another one, so pure, so wholesome. It made me so giddy. Y'all, seriously, I think I'm saying that about like 50% of these books. But those are the kind of romances that I love. Ones that make me feel good, that are giddy, that are wholesome, that are pure, where they have just like a strong emotional connection. That is so important to me in a romance. So Evie works for a company that helps match service dogs with people who need service dogs, and Jacob's daughter is in need of a service dog. So his daughter actually ends up setting up a meeting between the 2 of them without Jacob knowing. So he shows up to this meeting, and Evie thinks that he knows about the meeting and that they're gonna be talking about like matching his daughter with a dog or him with a dog. I don't remember how the daughter got them to meet up without him knowing. So she's like going in like ready, excited to like have this conversation, and he is such a grump. He's just like, no, like, I've been telling my daughter trainer. We're not getting a service dog. Like, it's just, we're not doing that. Jacob is just not about it at all. So Evie ends up winning him over. So Evie actually has epilepsy, and that is what Jacob's daughter has. And so Evie gets to kind of show Jacob how having a service dog has helped make her life better as someone with epilepsy. And so it was just, I loved it so much. And I think I really resonated with this one because before I do the work that I do now, owning my planner company, I worked at a school as a speech language pathologist assistant. And the SLP who I worked with, she had a service dog, a therapy dog. And so I got to spend a lot of time with my students with the therapy dog and just watching the interaction between like the therapy dog and my students and just how it gave them confidence and how it helped them open up. It was just so incredible to see that kind of thing happen in this book as well. And I think because I have firsthand experience with it, I just fell in love with this book that much more. And also, Sam is Jacob's daughter in this book. I think she's around 10, and she is so funny. I feel like she makes this book so much better. So I absolutely love this one. Sarah Adams books are very hit or miss for me. I feel like I either really love them or I'm like, oh no, way too cheesy for me. And this one was definitely a hit for me. My favorite book that I read in November was The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. This one I put off reading for a long time because the summary on the back talks about ghosts being a part of it, and I was like, I'm not really into like paranormal. I don't want to read about ghosts, but it's more like magical realism, like whimsical, not like scary horror vibes, okay? So this book for me was a 5-star, and I'm not going to talk about it too much because I will start crying. The main character, Florence, has just lost her dad. And this book deals with her journey through the grief of losing her dad. And as I was reading this, I was actually in the process, I'm gonna cry. I was in the process of losing my grandma to cancer. And so it was just right place, right time for me. I love Ashley Poston's writing. It's very whimsical, kind of flowery, but I just, like I said, it was right book, right time for me. I don't know if this would have been a 5-star read if I hadn't been going through what I was going through as I was reading it, but it just hit so hard. Like the quotes about grief, I cannot read one or I will start bawling on camera, but the quotes about grief, like they just made me feel so seen, and they helped me put words to what I was feeling that I was having trouble putting words to on my own. Because losing my grandma, that's been my first like big close proximity experience with grief. So reading this just felt like a healing balm to my heart. I'll tell you what it's about in case you're interested in reading it. So Florence is a ghostwriter for a really famous author, and when she goes home for her dad's funeral, her family owns a funeral home. So when she goes home for her dad's funeral, she ends up seeing the ghost of her editor because allegedly he has passed away. And so she has seen ghosts in her past. Like her and her dad, they both did. That's something that they kind of bonded over. And like I said, it's like cute, whimsical ghosts. It's not like creepy, horror, scary ghosts, because that's not my vibe, okay? I know this one was right book, right time for me, but I still would recommend it. I had such a good time. I love Ashley Poston's writing, and if you are in a season of grief, this might make you feel very seen and just help you navigate what you're feeling a little bit. And that brings us to the last book that I'm gonna talk about in today's video. This is my favorite book that I read in December, and it is The Last Letter by Rebecca Yarros. I had no expectations going into this. I had absolutely no idea what it was about, and I was sobbing when I was reading this. So our female main character is Ella, and our male main character is Beckett. Beckett is in the military with Ella's brother, Ryan. And Ella ends up trying to become like pen pals with Beckett, and Ryan tells Beckett, hey, if anything happens to me, I need you to take care of my sister and her kids. And so I don't want to go too much into this one because I feel like so much happens. Check the trigger warnings on this, like truly check the trigger warnings. But I just went on such a roller coaster, like an emotional roller coaster as I was reading this. I cried so much. I was just like a mess when I was reading this, and I just did not expect that. If you want an emotional read that is going to make you cry, give this one a read. Give this one a read. And I'm also someone who I love when there's different mediums in books, and Beckett and Ella, we get to read their letter exchanges. And so I was a big fan of getting to read their letters throughout the book. So like I said, if you want to cry, give this one a go. But those were my favorite books that I read in 2024. I feel like this video is going to be so incredibly long, but I hope that you enjoyed my Clear the Cart TBR challenge this year, and I hope that you enjoyed hearing about my favorite books in 2024. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget, if you don't have a 2025 planner yet, to head over to hustlesanely.com, use the code to get 10% off of a 2025 Peacefully Productive Planner. I would be so incredibly grateful for your support. I love you so much. I appreciate you, and I hope you have the best day ever.